Okay. So let me start with a familiar scene. You walk into a meeting with a perfect deck. The slides are all picture perfectly created, and the data is super clear and refined, and the strategy makes absolute sense. You deliver it confidently. You end the meeting expecting the energy in the room to be really good. But instead, there's silence. Heads nod politely, cameras blink off, and you almost feel that the energy just drops. You think, did they understand? Yes. Did they agree? Probably. Then why does it feel so heavy? Because every conversation leaves two outcomes: what people understand, and most importantly, how they feel after understanding it. While we spend years perfecting clarity, we rarely pay attention to that second layer, the second layer of how people feel after understanding your message as a leader. The second layer, the lingering emotion of your message, leaves behind what I call the emotional aftertaste. It is that invisible residue that decides whether people just hear you or are they moved by you. It is not written in minutes, but it is written in the nervous system of people that you lead, your teams. In today's world of constant messages, Slack pings, Zoom calls, emails, leaders don't just transfer information, but they transfer an emotional aftertaste. And that's the paradox of modern leadership communication. We are talking more than ever, but we are connecting less than ever. And today, let's explore how mastering your emotional aftertaste as leaders through what I call the communication intelligence can transform not just what your team does, but who they become in the process. Let's decode this idea of emotional aftertaste. Every interaction, every presentation, every meeting, every email, or even a quick Teams message that you do leaves two outcomes. The first is what people understand. The second is what how they feel after understanding it. And most leaders spend 90% of their time perfecting every aspect of their presentation, data, logic, content, but very little time shaping the second one. Yet, it's that the second layer is what determines the execution of the team. And if you look at neuroscience, neuroscience offers explanation before your words even reach the rational brain of your team. They pass through that amygdala, the part that scans for threat or trust. Within millisecond, your tone, your facial expressions, even those micro expressions of your face, everything trigger a signal, safe or unsafe. Can you believe even your typing rhythm is being noticed by your team? And then they are decoding at the back whether it is a safe signal or an unsafe signal from their leader. If the brain perceives threat, cortisol spikes and the message gets filtered through caution. If it senses trust, then their oxytocin races, the team's brain literally opens to new ideas, and they work fear free. Emotions move 5 times faster than logic. So before your message is processed, your mood has already been downloaded. And that's why the most technically brilliant message can still land very poorly because your nervous system is broadcasting long before your words even arrive to your team members. And if you look at where are we today, we are an AI accelerated world, and this matters just more than ever. AI can summarize, AI can automate, AI can analyze, but it cannot feel the tone, sense the tension, or inspire confidence. And that is where the responsibility sits squarely with the leader. Your presence, not your PowerPoint, shapes the performance of your team. And the takeaway is pretty simple. Each communication either builds trust or breaks safety. And that emotional aftertaste, that lingering feeling that you leave behind with your team, is that silent KPI that decides which one it is, whether they will have to be quiet or open up to new ideas and work as a team. So, you as leaders, when you master it, you move forward from being a good communicator to being a leader whose words change the state, not just an opinion. So, now with that, moving on to the cost of unawareness. This is where you dramatize the gap between what leaders think they're communicating and what the teams actually experience. It continues the what phase while hinting at the need for self regulation, preparing for the neuroscience and the framework, right? So let's move on very quickly and look at what happens when leaders communicate without awareness. Think about your last week, how quick updates turned into long follow up threads. How many short messages created confusion or tension in the minds of your team members? And how many times did your intent of your communication got just lost in the tone? And then you go about, hey, I didn't mean that. My intention was very different. And that goes on to talk about how people perceive the way you communicate. It happens because most of us lead on autopilot mode. We focus on clarity of content, not the clarity of climate. And I call this the leadership illusion, the gap between what we mean and what people can actually feel. And when we say we need to move faster, what we generally would mean is urgency. You know what the team members mean out of it? They hear panic. We say, let's review this again. And what do we mean by that? We mean quality. And guess what your team members would hear? They hear distrust of the leader on the team. And this gap costs performance, costs the team trust, and even time. One global study by MIT Sloan found that 72% of employees attribute their disengagement not to the workload or even the pay, but to the emotional tone of their manager's communication. It is not the number of messages that burns people out, it is that emotional friction in the communication that burns them out. So, if you look at it, we have had those moments, that tongue bite instantly when you catch yourself before reacting. We've all had those moments, right? That moment is actually not a weakness, it is a wisdom. And in that pause is where the communication intelligence begins. Because between the stimulus and the response lies your real power. The power to shape how people will think, will feel, and act after you speak. The stimulus and the response, and there's this gap between it, right? And that is where your communication intelligence is actually sitting. And communication intelligence is a power to help you shape how your team, your people will think, will be able to feel and act after you speak, which is very important when it comes to your corporate workplace. So, if you go back and think about your last meeting, you will now understand why your teams has not responded to your messages, why your team has taken a long time that you have to go up and follow multiple times. Let's unpack the science for you. When your tone is harsh, your team's amygdala fires, triggering cortisol, the stress hormone. What happens when the stress hormone goes up? Creativity drops, risk taking disappears. But when your tone is warm and consistent, the brain releases oxytocin. That is the bonding chemical that fuels trust, that fuels connection. So you literally rewire their brains through an emotional tone. And what happens to the micro mirror neurons? They pick up your micro expressions, a sigh, a pause, even a raised eyebrow during a meeting. All of them replicate. They replicate you subconsciously. If you walk into a room agitated, agitation spreads. If you walk in centered, becomes contagious. And here's the truth: you regulate your emotion, and in turn, you regulate the performance of your team. A calm leader creates a cognitive safety, and the cognitive safety becomes the very foundation of your team's innovation, ownership, as well as the speed. So, before we look at what you say, we must understand the climate you've created. So, how do we know what is the climate that you have created? I'd like to introduce the Leadership Climate Compass. Through research, we found that leaders typically create four emotional climates through their communication. The first one is the empowering climate, supportive and calm, where people feel trusted and take initiative. The second climate is inspiring but unstable climate, very passionate but reactive, where the teams are excited but equally anxious. So that's inspiring but unstable climate. And the third climate is the command climate, controlling and reactive, where people comply but they do not contribute. That is the command climate. The fourth one is a detached climate. It's very calm but distant, where teams deliver the tasks and the project but not ideas because they are quite detached. So I want all of us to reflect: when pressure hits, where do we go? Which climate do we go? Most leaders unknowingly shift towards command or detached, and that's when teams stop leading themselves. And the best leaders always stay in that empowering mode, supportive as well as steady, because that's what turn teams into autonomous, self leading, empowered teams. Now, with that, we would want to now have a framework, right? To shift ourselves from the detached mode to being inspiring but not consistent. The best mode to be in is the empowering mode. Now, how do we be there? That is where a model called as EAT model, a framework which comes into place for us as leaders to stay in the empowering climate all the time, even when the storm hits us very hard. Now, E stands for emotional awareness. Step one is all about you cannot influence others if you cannot regulate yourself. And in neuroscience, it shows that emotions last about 90 seconds unless we re trigger them through another thought, which means you have 90 seconds to reset before your tone or your inner energy infects the team. So let's look at a very simple ritual on how do we do this. Before you speak, ask yourselves, what is that emotion that I'm transmitting? Stress, impatience, or calm or confidence? Leaders who check their inner climate are 60 percentage more likely to create team trust. And the emotional awareness is the very foundation of self leadership because leaders' regulation teaches others how to self regulate their own emotional awareness as well. And that's when the ripple starts going in. So we start with E, E for emotional awareness. Then we move into A. A is alignment. Step two is about communication fails not because of the bad intention, but it is because of the misalignment between the intent and the impact that we create. We remember, no, the thin line between what I spoke and what other people understood. We say, I'm only being honest, but it lands as I'm being harsh. We say we are moving fast, but they hear we are under pressure. Alignment means what you say, what you feel with respect to what experience that they go through after you finish your communication. So, how do we keep our communication aligned? Before every conversation, pause and check what is my intent? What is my message? What do I make them feel? A leader who starts with these three questions can turn even a difficult message into a moment of trust. In a hybrid meeting, this means choosing words that reflect empathy without diluting the accountability because they both are very important to keep a balance and check. I'll give you an example. Let's refine this together. Instead of, you need to fix this. Now I'm bringing empathy without diluting the accountability. That small linguistic shift from you need to fix this to let's refine this together creates instant ownership instead of obedience, the command climate that we spoke about. So you now move from the command climate to the empowering climate. So that is alignment for you. The T, EAT, the T stands for trace. Every interaction, something lingers, right? The emotional memory of what you as a leader represent. And that's your leadership fingerprint. Now let's trace three elements: clarity, calm, and confidence. When people leave your meeting, do they feel clear about their direction? That's clarity. Do they feel calm enough to act without fear? That's it, calm. And for confidence, do they feel confident in their ability to deliver? And these three questions, or the after feeling that they have after the meeting, is vital for the team to operate by themselves. That's your post communication audit, a quick trace check that you have for yourselves. Leader who consistently leave these three emotions behind the high performance culture checked, they are the ones who create those teams who can operate by themselves, self leading, empowering teams. Because clarity gives your team a direction, and calm creates safety, and confidence creates initiative. And that's the moment the team feels that they can just simply lead themselves. Now, when we talk about self-leading teams, what is it very important? We want to talk about the ownership that the teams have to start thinking, acting, and taking decisions of ownership. Now, how do we connect the dot from eat to ownership? Emotional awareness makes you a conscious communicator and leader. Alignment makes you credible, and trace makes you consistent. Together, they create trust. And we all know that the trust is the birthplace of an autonomous team. When people feel trusted, they start thinking for themselves. When they anticipate problems before they even are assigned or before the risks can even occur, they hold themselves accountable because they feel emotionally safe to fail or learn. In other words, they stop waiting for direction and start designing solutions. And that is how autonomous teams or self leading teams are formed. And that is the power of communication intelligence. It scales leadership without adding that hierarchy or layers. So let's bring all of this together. Leadership isn't about managing performance anymore. It starts with managing the presence because every leader leaves two things. One, the result, and two, the residue. The number one tells only one story, but aftertaste tells the complete story. So, if you want self leading teams, you must first master the emotional aftertaste of your communication because people don't just remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel about themselves when you said it. So, in an AI driven world where data moves faster than thoughts, your human edge will be that emotional precision of your emotional aftertaste that you leave. So before you get into the next meeting, don't ask, what do I say? Instead, ask, what do I want to make them feel? Because what you say ends in few minutes, but how you made them feel becomes the culture of your teams. And that is the communication intelligence, the science of creating trust, ownership, and self leading teams. Thank you. Shh.
Yeah. Thank you, Kavina. It was really short and wonderful.
Yes, it indeed was short. I don't know
Yeah.
when, Rajvan, you just joined right now, no?
Rajwan, you have to unmute.
Any questions, anything to share?
But I know about the
Yeah.
topic is very well presented, and I've read about leadership. I myself am a motivational speaker, so I've read about leadership, everything, and I do podcasts. So leadership is my line, and I published the ebook. So I'm gonna lead with love, serve with love, and do my japas and everything. And despite despite me being ill, and I feel I'm able to lead every session with a light and with a bang. So I'm not sick, but I'm just maybe just tired from the after effects of the flu a few weeks ago, and now it causes muscle pain. And parents are away, so it just taught me how to lead the house as a dynamic woman as well. So I play a lot of roles to lead the house, to lead my work, to make sure that I've got circulation and to cure myself fully so that I'm aligned with my work, aligned with my care. So it's just amazing people around me, amazing parents, amazing everything. Amazing caregivers, amazing friends who care so much about me. So thank you so much, and God bless, and good night. I will see you on the next session next Wednesday. Thank
So,
you.
Thank you,
Kavina,
Rajan.
Tuesday.
I have a question. So, how do you get how do you get the cues and also respond to this, after taste of communication in online meetings when you can't see people? There is a silence as well. So, what are your suggestion and feedback on that?
So, if we look at emotional aftertaste as a topic for leaders and communicating to to their team members, we can actually get it through the engagement that they give in the even in the online meetings. How many turn on their videos? If it is actually the fatigue that is got through this online, yes. But how attentive they are, how much time and space are they taking in the meetings? Is it only the leader communicating or the teams are also communicating? If we can take the ratio between the time taken by the leader to speak in a meeting, 30 minutes meeting, and the team members taking, we can very well tell if the time taken by the leader is very high compared to the team members, it means they are disengaged. It means the emotional aftertaste of the leader is not giving them the safety to be even talking, to bringing those ideas forward. So they are all in that command mode climate that I mentioned, where they all listen very obediently, but they don't bring any new ideas into the team. There are results, but there are no innovation. There are no new breakthroughs of the team. So, one quick KPI that I can tell is the engagement in the online meetings. And later, we can also see the kind of culture on a longer term, because immediately what you see is engagement, but on a longer time, we look at the culture that it has been built. How do they respond? How do they uh, take the tasks into consideration and work? Am I only looking at my task and starting to ending that I'm responsible, or I'm being proactive and looking at not just my task but looking at a larger result, like a project result. So these are minute things which goes on to talk about the emotional aftertaste that the leader leaves with the teams.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for creating that. Yes.
Thank you very much for the question, Shabana.
Yeah. So now we don't have any further questions, so we can wrap it up for today. So thank you so much, Kavina, for bringing these very interesting topics and making us more aware. And not just us, of course, the world, they can walk.
Yes,
So thank
thank
you.
you very much, Shabana.
Yeah. And see you all again tomorrow.